All right. Well, good afternoon. I think this is working. Hello? Test 1, 2. No, this is not working. I knew something. Hold on here.
Pull your jacket.
What's that?
Your wire is catching your jacket.
Oh, there we go. Maybe that's it. Nope, that should work.
You can barely hear you.
Can you hear me at all?
Barely.
There.
Bring it back just fine.
There you go. The one there? Can you hear me?
I can hear you back fine.
Not here though? Oh, it is? You hear it? All right. Okay, have your attention for, maybe that'll work if you hear it back there. Does that work? You hear me? All right. Not technical difficulty. I've got a clothing difficulty. Well, good afternoon. You hear me all right? Sound system working. You can hear back there. First of all, I'm Dave Kleist, Mayor of St. Cloud, and I want to welcome you all to the People's House, our City Hall, our new City Hall, a building that served as a school for over 100 years. Welcome all of you here. I hope you had an opportunity to, if you haven't already, for those of you who've been here for the first time, if you've been in here as a student when this was a school, just raise your hand as I start. You were in detention, Councilmember Gerger, I know that. But the rest, that is great. And you obviously see the difference in this room. If you were here earlier, before the speech began, hopefully you had a chance to look at the monitors and you heard Marian Anderson singing. Marian Anderson, who was probably one of the best singers of the last century. Marian Anderson performed in this room when it was an auditorium 80 years ago this week. And so that was Ave Maria that she sang there. And it's historical because Marian Anderson came to St. Cloud 80 years ago. And Marian Anderson, if you don't know who she was the first African American to sing at the New York Metropolitan Opera. She sang at both the inaugurations of Eisenhower and JFK. She's the first African American to sing at the White House. She had a tremendous career, in fact, a Lifetime Achievement Award with an Emmy. But she sang here in St. Cloud. And there's a lot of firsts in this room. There's a lot, the fact that you're in what used to be the gym, the auditorium, in this part of the building. Not only did Marian Anderson sing here, but Eleanor Roosevelt gave a speech here in this room in 1941, October of 1941. And Elvin Barkley gave a speech here. Anyone know who Elvin Barkley is? Just raise your hand, don't yell it out. Do you know who Julia Dreyfus is? Raise your hand if you know Julia Dreyfus. Okay, most of your hands went up. You know Julia Dreyfus. She played the vice president. Elvin Barkley was the vice president of the United States under Truman. So just a little history. History is important, so you all need a little bit of a lesson. In fact, this state of the city, this is the 17th state of the city that I've had the honor to be able to present. There are various photos of where I've done these over that period of time. The very first state of the city that I had was at the old City Hall. And I've had a number of them at different places, all 17. Actually, the first one I gave to the council in the council chambers in 2006. And then that second one I had partnered with the Rotary, the St. Cloud Rotary, and the Chamber of Commerce. the St. Cloud Area Chamber of Commerce. And that partnership has been every single year. So I want to first of all thank the Rotarians who are here in the St. Cloud Chamber of Commerce, Julie Leining, the president of the St. Cloud Area Chamber of Commerce. And I don't know if Jackie Johnson's here. If Jackie's here, the president of the Rotary. I know there are a lot of Rotarians because you were just eating upstairs in our all-purpose room up there. The first to have a meal in the new City Hall. We had a lot of firsts in this room. But I want to thank the Chamber and the Rotary for all of what you do for our community. And thank you for being a sponsor and a supporter for our community and for these addresses. This is an opportunity. I give these addresses every year because it's an opportunity to talk about what's happening in the city, where we're at, oftentimes have ideas and a vision to go forward. In fact, I made a lot of announcements here that have happened. In fact, it was at a State of the City where I talked about a regional airport authority, which in January of this year we have a regional airport authority. We talked about a partnership with the University for Frederick Park, which of course Frederick Park is now open for us. A new way of doing economic development to creating an EDA, and which eventually led to the Greater St. Cloud Development Corporation, and a new way of doing regional economic development. Public safety, which led to a new police station, new fire station, and a number of things that we initiated here, a lot of things downtown. It's an opportunity to highlight not only what we're doing, where we're at and where we're going, but also I use this opportunity to highlight people who are doing tremendous things in our community. And that's the wonderful thing I love about this community. It's the people. And you're going to hear some stories of some folks that are just doing some remarkable things in our community. City Hall. A little history, because I was as a graduate of St. Cloud State University, an alum, I graduated with a degree in history and political science. So I needed to do something with my degree in history, so I give history tours, including of this building. But I know Robin Wacker, president of St. Cloud State University, is here. Appreciate that partnership and the collaboration that we have, and I really appreciate the university. But I appreciate the history, and if you look at those buildings, the building up in the corner up there in the far left, in the upper left-hand corner, that's City Hall from 1918 to 1937. That was the City Hall that was actually built to be a City Hall. There are 4 City Halls up there. The one that was built to be a City Hall lasted the shortest amount of time, 19 years. It was at 310 St. Germain, so where the Civic Center is today. It was City Hall until 1937, and then they moved the old post office. That's the second building up on the right. They moved that from downtown all the way there, and that became City Hall and was for City Hall for 50 years. Now, I wasn't around at that time. They didn't just destroy the old City Hall. They made it the police station. It was the police station actually all the way till 1987. And then, of course, the collaboration with Stearns County took place, and of course, now we have a new police station. We moved into a school, Central Junior High. That was done in 1984. Mayor Sam Houston, if you actually go back all the way to that first City Hall in 1918, that was Mayor Freeman in this area. But then they moved in to another school. And then, of course, when the new Tech High School was built, we moved into this building. So when the new tech is built 50 years from now, we'll move into that building, I'm sure. There's some school that is not being used. But the reuse of buildings and structures are important, and it's important in our community to preserve that history, that legacy. Legacy is so important. The history and the foundation is so important. And it's not just buildings, it's all the people who came through these buildings, all the people who graduated from this school. There is some tremendous talent you're going to hear about today that have been part of this. I mean, I can't say enough about this school district, District 742. I see Willie Jett in the background, superintendent, for a few more months, but you've had a tremendous impact, and you'll be missed. And I appreciate the friendship, and I appreciate you selling this. I was going to say giving us this building, but we paid $1 for it. We got it. You still owe us. No, but this is a great reuse of a building, and it's a great legacy. And that legacy that people, I started an award a few years ago, 2 years ago actually, called the Legacy Award. There are individuals in our community that really lay the foundation. They support the community, they lay the foundation, and they actually, their inspiration, they motivate other people to do great things. It's the foundation that's important. In fact, Marian Anderson, who you heard earlier, she's famous for a quote that you can't build the chimney from the top down. You know, you need that foundation. And the Legacy Award, which we started 2 years ago, the first two winners were Joanne Benson and Mary T. Howard, and then Carolyn Garvin last year. This year, I'm going to be announcing a Legacy winner, but in just a minute. But before I do that, the history of this and the history of our community is important to understand. And before I do that, before I ask the legacy, it's important. It's a budget year. I told Deanna Fa, my finance director, somewhere over here, that I'm gonna try to raise money today. So as part of that history, we're selling lockers. There's a lot of lockers in this building, and to preserve that history, you can buy a locker. This was an idea, actually, David Turch, our advocate out in Washington, D.C., gave me, and his wife, Maridel, Maridel actually is buying the very first locker here. So we're going to give her a locker, $500. You can buy a locker. James, somewhere over there on the table, you can sign up for those. We've got plenty of lockers in the building. But that money is going to be used to preserve the history of this building, to preserve, and in fact, what we'd like to do on the third floor, since we're not occupying that, is work with Stearns County History Museum and actually create classrooms over the periods of time on that floor, so that you can walk on that third floor and see the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. A wonderful opportunity to preserve that history. So for $500 or two for $1,000, you can preserve some lockers up here, which I think, important going forward, to preserve that history and that legacy. History is important. Those who don't study and appreciate history are doomed to repeat it. Those who do study and appreciate history are doomed by those people who don't study history and oftentimes are elected to office. So it's important that all of you embrace and understand and appreciate history. Hetty Tripp, the legacy, that foundation I'm talking about, we have Hetty, and I know she's surprised. This year's Legacy Award winner is Hetty Tripp. So, Hetty, and I'm glad you didn't probably go over and have a cookie, because your plaque is already on the wall over there. So I thought I would maybe kind of spill the beans if you saw that. But Hetty Tripp has been somebody who has been, as an author, as a social justice activist, as an educator, as just a strong mentor in our community, has done so much. In fact, I got when she was the coordinator for Create Community in 2005 when I became mayor, and she held that position, and then she eventually became a historian, but she stayed with it. In fact, some of her initial work now in this building, just down the hallway, for the first time this year, Create Community actually will have an office, and they'll become a 501c3 this year to further that work. And thanks to your foundation, and you're leading that effort. Hetty has started she began the St. Cloud chapter of the National Association of Asian Pacific Women's Forum. She's been a friend and a mentor, and one of the more important things too, she's driven. You have to have folks, and there's people that create a legacy that don't always agree with you, but they make you realize and understand things that are better for the community. So Hetty, truly a legacy winner. Congratulations to you. Now, with that foundation, there are a lot of young people, and I can say that every time I hear the stories, and this is something I know Rotary does with the junior Rotarians, and you have folks that come and speak, I'm always amazed, and I'm always feel so inadequate in what I did when I was that age, because some of these young people that are in, are seniors, or at school age or in college, have done remarkable things. So when I was working on, and we had this Legacy Award 2 years ago, I thought, we need to recognize people who are doing things that are that future legacy, that foundation. They're building on that foundation. So we created this year for the first time, and this will also be plaques. They're not up yet, but it'll be on that wall in this school. The Youth Building Award to 4 individuals, 4 remarkable, and this is the challenge with trying to create an award. There are so many talented individuals, it's really difficult to pick. But this year I wanted to pick, since we're in the City Hall and we're in an old school, the folks that we have here have something in common. They're all seniors in high school, with the exception of one who is a college freshman but was a senior. They represent Tech, Apollo, and Cathedral. They all are all part of the part of student government. They all have a commitment and volunteer in the community. The National Honor Society, they're all National Honor Society. That requires a degree of volunteerism, requires a high GPA. They all meet those standards, but each one has a little different. Faizine Ahmed. Faizine is here. Faizine actually, during COVID, when COVID began, he was tasked, I think, with his music instructor to do some music, play some music. The music would be recorded and it would be played in senior facilities, so that to help ease that tension. Faizine felt there needed to be something more than just recording. So he gathered a bunch of his some other teens, and they not only created music, they went and played. They went and talked. They went and actually played games and had discussions at St. Benedict's Center here in St. Cloud. They reached out and actually did something. He identified a problem or an issue, and came up with a solution. There are a lot of people who are really good at identifying problems. I hear them every day. They love problems, and I can identify them, but to actually create solution, and a senior in high school, to do that, it is remarkable. So as one of our members, we also have Famo Abdi. Famo here in the front. Famo has not only taken on the same task during COVID, working with seniors, working with elders, actually reading, doing translation, more information, really taking on the task of working not only with but also environmental, working at the Stearns County Quarries, clean, working in the community, volunteering, also again part of student government, but reaching out, looking at issues and problems and identifying a way to solve them. Claire Siasu. Claire Siasu is Claire over here. Claire, a Cathedral senior, who in addition looked at the challenge of COVID and actually wrote letters and organized writing letters to seniors, again to eliminate that isolation. Worked on actually creating chemo bags for the Coburn's Cancer Center at St. Cloud Hospital. Worked on a blood drive for the American Red Cross. Worked and volunteered on a number of things. An inspiration, again, mentoring other folks in soccer and golf and teenagers. In fact, one of our own, Abby, who's in planning, talked about the mentoring of her daughter. It really taking that an extra initiative and moving forward. Sam Brewer. Sam was a senior last year, now is a freshman in college, and is here also with us today. Took the initiative and not only in the area of volunteering and taking back in the community, but also helped co-found an organization, the Youth Collective, that basically is empowering and amplifying the voice of young people to their government. In fact, I think I was one of those recipients, where you spoke out on issues last year in Section 2020, met with folks, but also did a lot of work in environmental cleanup, cleaning up the river, a lot of those things. These are activities that these four have done. So our first inductees into an award, the St. Cloud Youth Building Award. If I could have four of you stand up where you're at. And thank you for what you're doing in this community. Every year when I give these addresses, to those of you who have been at many of these, I usually bring out a lot of, I wanted to do this time individually, picking folks that have done great things academically and community-wide. But I've also picked out a lot of sports teams. I've picked out a lot of folks that are just doing tremendous things. And I would have them here today, but I thought what better way to recognize, especially these teams that do a lot of things? You know, whenever a sports team wins a championship or they do something well, what do you do in some of these small towns? You have a parade for them. Well, we already have a parade. It's Granite City Days. So this year's theme of the parade is to celebrate champions. I want to have those teams, so whether it's from the university or for the school, and the folks that are, whether it's an athletic team or it's music or it's robotics, that have done remarkable things. And let's, as a community, come out and recognize them for what they've done. And so that will be part of the Granite City Days, which is at the end of June. It's the last weekend in June, the 23rd. Starts the 23rd, goes through the 26th. So I want to celebrate those champions that are in that in this community. Summertime by George, the Rotary has done so much with so many organizations, but they also give us an opportunity to celebrate. This is the 11th year of Summertime by George. In fact, that Granite City Day starts that Thursday. The 22nd, I think, is the first Summertime by George. So that'll be on that Wednesday with Cat Blue and I think the Mason-Dixon line. In fact, the Mason-Dixon line, talking about this school, and somebody who did well, Justin Plouffe was a 2002 graduate from this building, Tech High School. They'll be performing that opening act. What a gift to our community, and thanks to the Rotary for doing this for the last 11 years. Veterans, if you noticed when you came in, actually you might have noticed when you came into the building, I think when it comes to those who've served our nation, there is really no day that should go by that we shouldn't give gratitude to the fact that we live in this country. We live in a free country, and we have the freedom and liberty that we have. It's thanks to those veterans. You came into the building, we added some veterans parking out front, but we also, Charles Kapsner, the artist, Little Falls native, and just a tremendous artist, well-renowned. If you haven't seen in this little area here, there are some prints here of paintings that he did at Fort Snelling at the memorial at the cemetery, larger versions of them. But in the back in the wall, now we've had them at the river's edge. In fact, Glenn Holman and a number of folks, veterans who's here, who helped actually produce that. King Banyan, I think, did the narration. If you go over there at the river's edge, you'll see that. But you'll see the replica here, and this is the history. It's a history memorial. So if you look at each one of those paintings, the history of those military branches from the Army to the Marines to the Navy to the Air Force to the Coast Guard, and it depicts and it has a Minnesota connection. If you actually go and listen to the story, if you do that over at the river's edge, or if you can go online, there's a story behind each of those individuals, those faces, and in those pictures. So it's really a living memorial in art that we have, and we put it here because I think it's important to have that recognition. Those who've served this nation deserve our respect, and I think in this period in our life and in our time, there is no greater example of that than what's happening right now in Ukraine. You know, we have, again, two lessons. The lessons, again, about history, repeating history, but also the importance of freedom and liberty. And you see that freedom and liberty, you see a tremendous example of that in the Ukrainian people. I have never in my lifetime witnessed such a resolve for that liberty and that freedom and that self-determination. We live in a country where we determine our representation. The free world anticipates a respect, but you're seeing it lived out in people who are doing that now. There are 4 million people who have had to flee Ukraine because of Putin and what Russia's doing. We have a connection, we have a strong connection internationally at St. Cloud State University, and it's important that we have that connection. We've had students, that's always been designed to create and to build relationships so that we don't have the situation we have. We have some students here today that are students at St. Cloud State University from Ukraine. And if you would please stand up, we honor you. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you. It's that liberty, it's the veterans that not only that we honor in what they do, but we also honor them when they return. And it's important that we remember that too. You know, Phil Rinksmuth here. Phil, Phil is somebody that's been pushing for a long time. He's a strong advocate of veterans. Both Len and Phil and a lot of folks have been pushing for a vet center here, been working with the VA. In fact, I had an opportunity to meet with the Secretary of the VA just a few weeks ago and talked about the work, and now Minnesota's going to have one. St. Cloud's going to have a vet center, and working on where that, and I offered this to the Secretary. Why not have it here in this building? There's a lot of folks that have been veterans who served. In fact, there used to be a mural on the wall just not too far from where we're standing, honoring the World War II veterans, the Vietnam veterans. So I'm offering, I got to get it through the council, but I'm sure they'll support it. I'm offering this as a place to really to focus on helping veterans. A vet center helps on that a long time, sometimes way after somebody has served in the military. They still have those challenges. I know that from personal experience. I have two brothers that served in the military. There are 5 of us in our family who served, and I had a brother that just 2 years ago tragically took his own life. But in reading the powerful note that he left, it was something that was from his time in service many years before. So what we can do for veterans, not only when they're serving, but long after they come home, is something that we as a nation and a community owe it to those men and women. So thank you for what you're doing. You know, that freedom and that liberty, those are principles. And I think it's always important that we understand those principles. And when you serve in office, I think it's important that those who serve understand those principles and those responsibility and the role that they have. Principle, I use the word power here. Elected officials have no power. The power comes from the people they represent. Elected officials who take power, or not elected officials who take power, is dictatorship. And this is a country that was based on the principle that power comes from the people. And that's important to understand, and it's important to understand principle and the principle and responsibility of each level of government. A city has a responsibility that a city has, a state, federal. The responsibilities often get blurred, and I think it's an unfortunate thing, because I think as a community, as a city, there are certain things that you have an obligation and a responsibility for. And there are certain things that government has a responsibility for, and those things that are not government. Government was always designed to be limited, and I think it's important for people to understand that, the limits of that. The Constitution limits the power of government. It doesn't add power to anything, it limits. But the responsibility comes to those you represent. Power, that principle and that responsibility is important, but it's of the people that we represent. So how do we determine what people want a city and a community to do? You have to engage. There's lots of ways to engage. We collaborate, we do surveys. We survey folks. We're going to be doing one again at the end of this year, probably into next year. But I do something that I think is important, and I do town hall meetings. And last week I had my 850th town hall meeting. I do them every week, and have done, and sometimes more than once a week. But I do them because I think one of the greatest fears people have is public speaking. So if you come here to this council chambers and you want to voice your opinion and you're afraid to speak, which is 80% of the public, how do you get that message out? I had somebody at one of my town hall meetings say there was, I think, 6 of us at some of the town hall meetings, and I've had as many as myself at a town hall meeting to 600 people. But I had someone that said, there's only 5 or 6 people here. I mean, shouldn't there be a larger group? And I said, well, if we had 50 people here, only 5 or 6 would speak anyway. So I'd only hear 5 or 6. If there's 5 or 6, you're all going to be heard. And we're going to be able to judge and that's why the town hall meetings are important to me, and that's why I have them. We're actually going to be starting a new, I try to do this and engage in a new way. I do these dinner with strangers. I haven't killed anybody yet. But I cook a dinner. I have folks that I don't know. That's the only caveat. And then you get to know people. I'm going to do a new town. We're actually going to, instead of one town hall meet, I'm going to add another one during the summer. So 2. One will be the traditional one I have at different places around town. But now I'm going to do, people who know me well know I walk a lot. And I walk and I'm on the phone all the time, you know, and I have my little earbud in there. So people think I'm crazy and I talk to myself. So I need someone to talk with. So I'm going to create these walk and talk town halls. I got this idea from King Banyan. I think when he was in the legislature, he did this around Lake George. And so I'm going to be doing this at least once a week around Lake George. And if you want a longer one, you know, last week I walked 28 miles. So if you have your mind, we can do it at a longer period of time. But I'm going to start that. Actually, we'll be starting that next week. So walking town hall meetings, because it's how we determine what you want, what your priorities are. But to how we demonstrate what your priorities are, it's a budget. The budget is a responsibility that I have to present to the City Council in August. We start working on that process now. It is something that it's probably the most important responsibility as mayor to present the budget. It reflects what we do in a community, reflects the priorities in a community. And we've focused on making sure that we're wise stewards of your dollars. It's not my money, it's yours. So we've kept spending down over that period of time, over the last 17 years. If you look and if you adjust it for inflation, it's not far off to where we're at. We keep the tax rate. We have a policy of capturing the growth in the community, so we keep that rate low. And our bond rating is high. And that's really basically our credit rating. So if you understand what that is, if you're trying to get a loan, we have a very high credit rating because we take restraint and we do what's the responsibility of a city. You know, you could do a lot of things that are not the responsibility. I often get this sometimes. I'll have someone say, well, Rochester does this or Duluth does this. Yeah, that might be true, but then you pay for that, and you'll see a difference probably in the taxation. You'll see a difference in, you know, and when times get tough, what do you have to cut? You have to make cuts to certain things that aren't necessarily your core. We focus on the core, public safety and infrastructure. So when times are difficult, and we've seen many of those, we can maintain the core part of those services, those public safety services. But if people say, well, other cities do this, other cities do that, well, this is a better comparison to me. This is the top line is the property tax for Minnesota. The bottom line is the property tax for St. Cloud. That has gapped and this is on an average property, so we try to keep that cost down but we still provide those services, and I'm going to be talking about award-winning services in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to public safety, it comes to sustainability, when it comes to infrastructure. But we keep that down at a rate that's affordable. We know right now how difficult it is to buy a home. We know the cost of building. We know the cost of, what is it? It's the 4 L's, I'm told, the land, labor, lumber, and laws. We try to help with the laws so that it doesn't get too complicated because we want to make sure that people produce and the market produces houses and homes, but we try to keep also the cost of owning a home down. Something you can't control is property tax. So we try to keep that and we focus on that. And we focus on it because we've got a tremendous team that works here for the city. We've got a number of folks that I know are in this room. And I've been mayor for a long time. I just realized that recently. When I first became mayor, we had what's called an extended leadership team. It was about 20 of us. We gather in a room. And when I first became mayor, I remember going to my first meeting at that extended leadership meeting. I was the youngest person in the room. I just realized the other day that I'm the oldest person in that room now with that leadership team. But that's good because there's a lot of creative, a lot of energy, but it just goes to show we've had a lot of folks that have served here and that have moved on and they're in different areas. I know that I can see at least some faces. I invited some folks that have been here in the past. I see county administrator, former city administrator Mike Williams, Matt Staling, who holds that job now, who was actually here prior to that too as a city attorney and been with the city for a long time. We got a lot of great folks that really serve you well In fact, I can say that I work with these people day in and day out. They're some of the brightest, they're some of the really the most talented people and most committed to this city that I've seen, and I have the honor and the privilege to work with. If you're a city, could stand up. I want to recognize the folks that work, including the folks in my office. In fact, sometimes people in my office retire and I have them come back. Sandy, I know, is back here. Sandy and Diane and Matt and Seth and Emmanuel and James. That's in my office, but there's a lot of other folks. Stand up, please. I just want to have you be recognized. These are the people who work for you. Yeah. And see that these are the folks that really lead the way, and they sit in the back of a room. These are the folks, though, that are doing things, and they're really leading in this community. But we have, I think, like everybody, workforce issues. Certainly, there's workforce issues in the general public. I know this. I mean, the number one thing I'm an employer. I've been a small business owner for 31 years. It's hard to get people to work, to find people that are able to work because there's a shortage of labor. We have that despite the fact that we're actually leading in we have a lot of industries. In fact, we outpace when it comes to actual job growth over the last decade or so. And in fact, if you look at new business growth, we're actually outside of the metro area. We're leading in greater Minnesota in job growth and new entrepreneurs. But we need folks in this community, and there's some solutions to that. You know, if it used to be in economic development, you would always try to go find somebody to bring jobs to your community. Now you need people that will work at the jobs that you have in your community. So it changes how the dynamic of what you do. Now you need to focus on that infrastructure, that public safety, and that quality of life. You can work pretty much anywhere in this country, but you make a choice to where you live. So you've got to have a system of parks and trails and activities and events and things that people want to be in. And that's an important, and we'll talk a little bit about how we get there. But we're not immune at the city. Public safety. We're having a challenge when it comes to all levels. And public safety is one of the areas that's our top priority. We will not compromise on public safety, but it's challenging. In the last few years, we've had a challenge of retention, recruitment, and it's not because it's a morale issue. I think our morale in our public safety folks, especially in police, is the highest it's ever been since I've been mayor. They know the community supports what they do, but the profession itself has challenges, and that have been highlighted over the last few years. So we need to work more at that area and it's all of our folks. And I always mention folks, but when I talk about public safety, there's a piece of public safety that's often not identified, and that's information technology, IT. I can tell you, moving into an old building that's 100 and some years old, Micah, you and your team, our IT folks, IT folks are usually in the basement. I've been watching this British on BBC TV, and that's where we had you in the old City Hall. Now they've got windows for the first time, but they just see the brick wall across the way. But Micah, your team, I want to recognize their IT folks are probably out making sure things are working. IT makes everything work. Although I think sometimes you just program things to not work, so that, but all I do is shut things off, turn it back on, and it works. But thank you for what you do. But they're part of that public safety. Our legal team is part of this public safety. Without the folks that are attorneys or prosecutors, we wouldn't have a public safety system. So it is a team effort. Fire, police, our inspections, all are part of that team. Public safety it's not like there's a police department over here. It is a city. It is your public safety department. It's community based. And we lead the way when it comes to the community policing and a lot of the initiatives. In fact, I think it was highlighted more in the last 2 years than it ever has been for what we do to be creative and to be engaged. We actually, as a police department, have an engagement division. Very few police departments around the country have that. We actually engage, whether it's a community outpost, the cop house. We do partnerships too, whether it's the Public Safety Foundation or other entities. We partner, we engage, we involve. We've had a community policing agreement that's been in place since before I was mayor. That's how long that goes back with people that we bring to the table, and that changes. It's a living, it's dynamic. We continue to work on that engagement. The community outpost is new. Now we have an opportunity to have another one on the east side. We look forward to that. But if we have a shortage of people, and this is what I've really pressed to our legislators, if we have a shortage of people, we lose what sets us apart and what actually is needed in a community, and that's the engagement, that's the outreach, because all we'll be doing is answering calls. We have to have that. So we met with our legislators to work on something. In fact, we had two bills that were going. Representative Wolgamott, Representative Tice, I know, who are here, and Senator Putnam, I think, is in the room too, that are here. Representative Tice is carrying a bill that gives a tax holiday. If you're in law enforcement, to keep you or to get you, no taxes for 2 years. You know? And why not? We've done that for the military in the past. These are folks, this is safety. Safety is important to a community. We need to make sure we retain and retention. The other one is giving grants to folks for to stay in law enforcement and stay in our community. We need to do something or we risk the possibility of losing the thing that sets us apart and the things that makes us a community that's engaged and people want to live in. We also invest in infrastructure. We're doing a record amount of road resurfacing this year. A record amount. I just got to repeat that again because people always tell me we don't do anything on the roads, we don't fix any roads. Well, yeah, you don't write the checks. But we are doing a record amount of resurfacing this year, and we did a lot last year too. We're also doing some major projects, Cooper, Wilson, and Wade Avenue. We're putting our investment into roads. Roads and infrastructure are important, so we're doing that. We're also working with our federal and state folks. There's some additional roads we need to help with capacity, but we're doing that. We also fill potholes. If you got a road that has a pothole and it hasn't been filled, it's also because we preserve history. It's part of our historical preservation system. So we'll get to it, but we will get to it. But roads is part of that infrastructure. But also part of that is your water. You need safe water. You know, we collaborate. In fact, we are committed to clean water. We're in the second year of a 4-year, $40 million wastewater upgrade at our plant down by the Mississippi River. We have, and thanks to our team here. We also had Lake George. Lake George was there's 2,600 bodies of water that are on the impaired waters list. 53 are coming off this year, including Lake George. We're one of 53 that are coming off that. Thanks to Noah Zek, who has really been working for 10 years to actually get that impaired water off of that. So it's Emma Larson and Lisa Volbrecht. I don't know if they're here too. They've been focusing on getting the money and the grants to do that. Tracy Hodel, who heads all of that department here, just a biologist from St. Cloud State University. You're sitting in front of the president there. So there's an alum, somebody who just I could listen to all day because she makes science seem very interesting, and especially biology. But we're doing that. We're improving the water. Again, that's a safety issue. It's important to you. And we set goals. This is something that this chart I use here. In 2014, we set a goal so that by 2030, we wanted to make sure that we were carbon neutral in our facilities, but also that they produced the energy that we paid them for. We set that goal in 2014 to reach in 2030. It was reached in 2020. In 2020, we are 100%. All the buildings that you see, our public buildings, are actually not only don't cause us any energy, and they aren't putting carbon into the environment. We actually produce more than, in fact, last year was 107%, 2021. And if you look at that, if you add in hydro, we're at 300%. We actually produce more energy than we use as a city government in those entities, which means we take, and if you think about even going over the last 7 years, we've saved $6 million. That means lower rates when you pay for utilities. We've taken 94,000 metric tons of carbon out of the atmosphere. 94,000 metric tons. 15,000 metric tons a year. If you don't know what a metric ton is, I've been told, our folks told me that it's like if you took a 27 by 27 by 27, that's a metric ton, or a great white shark. I actually added up a little different. If you take the Tech offensive football team and you add in the coaches, that's a metric ton. So 94,000 of those is how much carbon we've taken out. So it's environmental, but it's also a cost. It's saving you money in your pocketbook. So it makes a difference. And so we're going to set some higher goals now. We achieved these goals early. We're at 20, we're at 100%. We're looking at 2028, not only the city function, but the community as a whole to be neutral on that energy in 2028. That's in 6 years, and that's achievable. And if you add in actual cars and transportation, we want to reach that by 2038. In fact, there's an event coming up on the 30th of this month, Recharge. We're actually going to have charging stations that are city-owned over in Riverside Park this year. Come on out to Lake George on the 30th. These goals are attainable. I know they're attainable because we've achieved goals that were not attainable before. We're leading the state as far as a wastewater facility that we have that is actually the first in the state that's actually producing this energy. So it is something, and these Liz Kramer does the stats. So when you talk about all these stats, she's the one that actually puts all this together. So if I'm inaccurate, no, I'm just kidding, Liz. These are all accurate stats, so we keep track of this, and it's important that we do that. And now we've got a partnership that we're working on to actually do more. We have, in fact, we have Pascal Dietrich. Pascal is somewhere in here? Okay, Pascal Dietrich. We got somebody here who's here he's from Münster University in Germany. It's a partnership and a collaboration that we have, and he's actually here because they're leading the world on some of the technology. We're actually looking at creating hydrogen out of the waste that you have, and Pascal's here to help us with that. You got 5 months. We'll give you an extra month if you. But to not only that, to again reduce that cost, help the environment, and this is somebody who is that collaboration, that partnership that we're working with Germany, and this is, again, this is a plant and that we have really focused on. And thank you for being here. Now, Pascal's from Weinstadt, small little town, or I don't know how small it is in Germany. Every town in Germany working on these type of focus. But he's from Weinstadt, and if you speak German, you know what that means? That's wine city. Pascal comes from Wine City. And we're working on another collaboration from somebody who's coming from Spalt, which is our sister city, and they're the hops, so they're the beer city. So somehow we're focusing on this innovation through wine and beer, which is good because we actually take wine and beer. We actually take beer from Cold Spring and actually create energy out of it. So maybe that's the inspiration. But thank you for being here, and thanks for what you're doing. National trends with local efforts. We got somebody, Toby Peter. I don't know if those of you who probably know Toby. Toby was an exchange student here. He was actually a graduate of Tech in 2005. He went on to St. Scholastica and then got a master's from Harvard. And he's the director of research in housing for AEI, which is the American Enterprise Institute, which is a bank in Washington, D.C. that focuses on market-driven approaches to policy. And he will be here. He's going to actually be speaking to our city council at a study session on May 2nd to look at housing. Housing is that other piece. It's workforce, it's housing. We need to figure out a way to do it. He's got a concept of walkable communities that he's going to be explaining to the council. Council President Gerger has heard the presentation I have, so has Matt Staling. We're going to look at walkability where we can increase the housing stock with market forces, especially without having to, do it in some of our core neighborhoods without adding large complexes, but a way to do that and still help with the environment, but also put housing in. But also he's going to help us with downtown. Downtowns are changing. COVID has changed the way people operate and work. The Chamber of Commerce is actually looking at collaborating or actually being part of the Downtown Council, or actually the Downtown Council is being part of the Chamber. So Toby's actually doing some study for free, by the way. That's the nice thing about having a tech graduate that's from St. Cloud. They're doing all this research for free, but they're studying St. Cloud and how we can better serve our downtown. Downtown housing, jobs, these are all things that we need to do. So we're taking advantage of partnerships, collaboration, and working together to solve these issues. We're not just going to keep identifying the problem. We're going to solve the problem through the help of folks that are in our community. We also, Clark Field, that is now a city park. Thank you, Superintendent Jett, for giving us that. You would have gave it to us last summer, but I wanted you at least to mow it to the rest of the year. Now it's the city park, and now grass will grow. That is our 98th park. We're working on, in fact, look for the end of next year, I will be up to 100 parks without buying any more parkland, but look for some other partnerships we're looking at for some more parkland that in some collaborative efforts in the future. But we also have the trail system. We're doing that Beaver Island Trail extent. We're actually redoing the trail from the university to down by the McStop area, and then that trail eventually will go all the way to Warner Lake. But we're working with St. Cloud State University on a collaboration. The trail that's behind St. Cloud State done some really great remodeling behind Eastman when Eastman was remodeled. We to enhance that, and working with President Wacker, we're going to look at ways that we can do that together to enhance the opportunity for students. So we're looking at recruitment. We're going to work on the beautification. We're going to work on the trying to retain and bring in students into this community, but we're also going to focus on some public safety things. We're going to do that not only in the university, but throughout the community. Partnerships and collaboration, this is one of them. And it's important. As part of that bringing a workforce in, you've got to have parks. We understand that. And what do you have parks? You got to have trees. So we're going to plant some trees. In fact, the 100 parks I'm talking about, I'm going to plant 100 trees here in the next few months. But you have an opportunity. Remember before when I told you that $500 you can get a locker? For $250 you can get a tree. And a little plaque that'll go along. We're going to actually have pictures of all of our parks out here on this barn thing here. So buy a tree, support the legacy and the history of a community, and support the future by buying a tree. So you'll have those opportunities here too. But we're going to plant some trees in these parks. It's part of we're Tree City USA. We've been that designation for 30-some years. We're going to continue that effort. And speaking of parks, we have challenges every budget year, and we look at what we prioritize. As I've mentioned before, it's public safety, it's infrastructure. Oftentimes our neighborhood parks sometimes are just harder to do because the city comes into financial situations all the time. But parks and trails are important to retain and to bring people into our community to take the jobs that are so necessary in our community. I'm asking the City Council this year to put on the ballot, and then we'll be asking you for a referendum for a bond that we can fund our neighborhood parks with the repairs and maintenance of parks that already exist that otherwise wouldn't have funding sources that we can bond over the next 20 years, but we could actually do the work in the next 5 years to actually really enhance that experience of livability so that people come in and take those jobs or retain and stay in those jobs through a park referendum. Look for more information coming later this year. But we're known for a lot of things. And I've got this list, and I could read through this, but this is an external view of the things that we're known for in this community. The best town for older Americans, best city for women in the workforce, Clean Energy Community Award, most livable city in the world. We read that at LivCom actually in 2019. That's on the issue of sustainability and some of the things that we do. I think it's those external things that are important because that's what other people see. Sometimes we lose sight of all of the positive things that are going on in our community. But I think if I've had the good fortune to travel a lot, and if you travel, you can see there are other cities that have potholes. There are other cities that have challenges. We all have challenges, but I think we come together as a community and we create solutions because of the people that live here, and that's an important distinction, and we're recognized for a lot of those things. And we're recognized even more for one thing that I think Minnesota leads the way on, and that's volunteerism. We volunteer. I think we have to reset and reboot a little bit. COVID has caused a big challenge for folks. You've got creative students that are doing things and finding ways to actually serve. But a lot of times those volunteer organizations and some of the relationships that we built to do, again, an IT thing, we just need to reboot. Shut it off, turn it back on. We need to really volunteer and really do things. I had somebody once, in fact, we have a Adopt a Drain program where we ask people to adopt drains. I had somebody actually send me an email and say, why should we be adopting a drain? That's the city's responsibility. I need to remind people, you are the city. Everyone in this room, if you're in St. Cloud, you are the city. So if it's the city's responsibility, you're still paying for it. So if we do things, together, and we partner together, it allows us. It's first of all sustainable, but we get more done, and that volunteering is something you see in this community all the time. And I got the picture of the folks that I always mention, that I always give them a challenge, and that's Dan Oxner, John Bodette, Jay Caldwell, Lisa Schwartz. I give them a challenge. We've done like pickleball, I think. I only accepted one challenge. I always have them try to do something every year, the steps challenge. But this year I'm giving them an easier challenge. Next Friday's Earth Day. I'm going to clean up a park, so I just want you to join me to help clean up a park. So I'm putting you all on the spot. So if you don't show up, I'll be doing that on my TikTok account. So you'll see it. But if I want you to on next Friday and the Friday after, which is you got Earth Day and Arbor Day. But I'm asking this as a challenge. But I'm rather than challenging just these 5 people, I'm challenging you as a community. This is the community you live in. This is something where you need to. I believe we work better when we're engaged as a community. We accomplish much when we partner in this community. This is something that I think it's best said. Jackie Robinson, 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson, who was the first African American to Major League Baseball. In fact, I think it was last Friday the 15th, Jackie Robinson Day in baseball with the then Brooklyn Dodgers. But this quote I love, and this is one of those things I was walking around. I walk all the time. I came across this quote on a bench, and this is his: "Life is not a spectator sport. If you're going to spend your whole time in the grandstand just watching what goes on, in my opinion, you're wasting your life. Participate. Be involved." It was Gandhi that said, "Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in your community." Be involved. It's easy to talk about things. It's easy to talk about freedom and liberty. But it's those who ensure it that are our heroes. It's easy to talk about public safety, but it's those that secure it are our guardians. It's easy to talk about health care, but it's those that provide it save lives. It's easy to talk about the issues and the problems that we have, but those that get involved to solve them make for a better community that we want to live in, we want to thrive, we want to work in. So that involvement, that part of our community is something that I know. One thing that I know we have, if you look at the assets that one has, the most important asset that any company, any business, any entity has is the human asset. So we have what it takes in this community, each and every one of you, and an individual can make a huge difference. Each and every one of you, there are many examples of where that has happened in our history and in our time, and you all can, and you do every day. The state of this city of St. Cloud is solid based on a foundation of people that have been doing things in this community for 100 and some years. The future of St. Cloud is solid because of the young people who are engaged and willing to make this a better community. St. Cloud is built on a foundation, is solid, and is growing because of all of you. Thank you for being St. Cloud. I appreciate it. God bless you. There you go.